welcome back. It's Dorit Shoshani. Thank you for joining me on my channel. Today's video is going to be on convincing our child to go to sleep. How do we do that? So we're going to dive in. We're going to talk about convincing as one of the 7 C's. The 7 C's is a concept that I've created to help us remember the 7 ways that we want to show up when we're setting boundaries. And we're not going to dive into all those 7 C's in this video. We're going to dive into one of them. One of those C's is convince. And thinking about how we show up when we are parenting is super, super important because our children are constantly watching us. They're like little radars, constantly keeping us, in their field of view and checking out what we're doing and how are we moving and what does our body language look like and are we huffing and puffing or are we frustrated, or all of those little nuances of how we comport ourselves become information for our children. And then what we say gets perceived as serious or less serious, or, my dad means business or my dad totally doesn't mean business. And so when we learn to put focus on how we show up, we can show up with intention. And convincing when we're setting a boundary is even more important than anything else, because what we say does have some sort of impact, but where it's coming from and how we show up really kind of tightens the line and says, this means business. We are serious right now. And so I invite you, when you are setting a boundary, doesn't matter what that boundary is. It could be, for example, that you say, when we're going to eat, we sit in a chair. And if you're not going to sit in the chair, we're not going to eat. Very simple. No eating on the couch, no chasing you around the house with a spoon. We're not doing that. You want to eat, you sit down, you eat in the chair. When you set a boundary like that, your child is watching you. They're not just listening to your words. And if you think about it, for young kids who don't have, language yet, they even more so are watching how you show up, and they even more so are connecting to your energy and to whether or not you're convincing in your disposition, in your mannerisms, and in your tone of voice. So I invite you to think about how it is that you show up. I think I can give you an example here. I have a family that I was working with where her son was tantruming constantly crying, constantly holding onto her leg, not wanting to cooperate, always kind of feeling needy. And she said to me, I've definitely checked against all his needs. He's well met. All the needs have been well met. I feel like this is a boundary issue. Can you help me set a boundary? And I said to her, I would like you to please show me an example of how things are going at home. And she sent me a video, and I was watching the video, and I noticed in the video that her son, who was a year old at the time, was not wanting to walk. And she was telling him he needed to walk just through the house. She was like doing house chores. And she said to him, you need to walk. And he just wouldn't have it. And he was holding onto her leg and crying and sobbing. And he had snot dripping from his nose and tears all over. And he was just, oh my God, such a poor little boy. And she was saying to him, you need to walk. And he was not having it. Now, in that video, what I noticed was that she was saying he needs to walk. So the words were very clear, but her body language did not relay that message. Her saying he needed to walk needed to be very, very in line with the way that she was going to respond as far as her behavior. And so if I say you need to walk, but I'm just, allowing you to pull on my pants and not cooperate, that doesn't relay a clear message. But if I say to you, you need to walk, and you are hanging on my leg, and I literally remove you from my leg and move you to a different space and move on with my chores or my laundry that I'm folding or whatever else is happening, then it's clear that I mean business, because I am convincing in my body language. I am convincing in my behavior. I am not saying you need to walk and allowing you to hold on to my leg. I'm saying you need to walk, and I'm removing you from me in order to allow you that space to walk. So think about how your child perceives you. Sometimes we think about what we're doing and we think, well, it should be pretty clear, but it's not always clear from the other side. What does your child perceive? How are you moving? What does your voice sound like? What does your body language look like? Are you convincing? Are you seriously convincing? Would you convince yourself? Would you be convinced if this were you? And then think about that, because your child is most likely perceiving your body language more so than your words. And so you want to make sure that you have both in line. Your words are in line with your body language. And that together should become very convincing. And when you're convincing, then it's very clear what the expectation is and what you want to have happen. And it allows your child the opportunity to rise up and step up to the challenge. So let's connect this example to sleep. When we think about putting our child to sleep and we want to say goodnight and we want to walk out of the room, how are we walking out of that room? If we're even walking out of that room, we might not be walking out of that room. We might be just standing there or sitting there or just waiting till they fall asleep because we don't feel we can walk out of the room. But then again, think about the message that you're relaying. You want to be convincing. And what are you convincing around sleep? You're convincing your child that sleep is natural. Disconnect is natural. I'm going to say goodnight and I'm going to walk out. There's no reason why I wouldn't. Just like when I drop you off in daycare. I take you to daycare, I say goodbye, and I leave. I never think to myself, maybe I should quit my day job because he's crying when I leave. You never think those thoughts, or maybe we do think them, but we don't actually act on them. So when you're thinking about sleep, you put your child to sleep, you say goodnight. You need to be convincing in how you leave. How are you leaving the room? Are you leaving with hesitation? Are you not leaving at all? Are you bringing a chair and actually getting cozy there? What's the message? Think about that message because you need to be convincing if you expect your child to understand the message. So when we say goodnight with confidence, we turn around, we walk out, and if we need to, we can always go back in. But we're not going to compromise on that convincing opportunity that in the moment that I put you to sleep and I say goodnight, I will walk out of the room because that's the natural way that we go to sleep. So think about in your sleep adventures with your family and your children, are you convincing? When you say to your child, let's say your child's in a toddler bed, if your child's calling you back to come back into the room and you're saying to him, we're not having any more conversations now, we're just going to go to sleep, is that really what's happening? Are you convincing? Or do you end up having conversations all through the night? Are you trying to convince them through words and then your words don't really mean much? So again, take that spotlight, put it on yourself. Think about it. How do I show up? What kind of messages am I giving my child? Do I act in accordance with the message I'm trying to convey? And am I convincing? Do I convince myself in what I'm doing? Because if the answer is yes, then you're most likely acting in accordance with what you're trying to relay. And then your child will perceive it as such, and that will make all the difference in the way that they respond. So I hope that this was helpful. And if you're interested in learning more about boundaries or you want to dive into the 7 C's, I have a whole entire module in my online digital sleep course. You can click on the link below in the show notes and find out more about it there. And if you're not ready for that yet, but you do want to get your kids sleeping, you can grab my free guide. Guys, it's free. I'm going to keep saying that it's free. Just go grab it. There's no reason not to. It's called The 3 Main Reasons Why Your Child is Still Not Sleeping Through the Night. It's going to give you insight without being overwhelming. You'll just get the pointers of what you need to put your focus on so that you can start making that shift to better nights and better sleep for you and your family. So thanks for being with me, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.